A darkness approaches. A day will come in the future when everything you care about will change.
What was Bill talking about when he said everything was going to change?
Finally, everything changes. Today.
Welcome back, everyone, to Going Back to Gravity Falls. When Gravity Falls premiered in 2012, it was the weird new cartoon on the block in a somewhat dry climate for animated television. By the time it was getting ready to start season 2, 2 years later, animation had officially joined the golden age of television in no small part thanks to Gravity Falls. The show was on top of the world, becoming one of Disney's biggest hits, which adds a lot of excitement and pressure going into another season. The first season was so promising and showed a lot of potential, but now the task is actually following through on those promises and living up to that potential. Gravity Falls was about to enter what we would later find out was the second half of its grand adventure, with hundreds of thousands of dedicated viewers and a well-earned reputation for being funny, eccentric, mysterious, intelligent, and captivating. With the agonizing year-long hiatus between the season 1 finale and the season 2 premiere only making people hungrier for more. To see some revelations in this mystery the show laid out subtly in season 1, but viewers have become wholly invested in. But the story of season 2 doesn't actually begin with the season premiere. There was something to hold this new dedicated fanbase over in the year between season 1 and 2, the online shorts. In the gap, Disney released several shorts themed around Gravity Falls regularly on their various YouTube channels. Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained, which saw Dipper investigating strange occurrences and cryptids in Gravity Falls, Mabel's Guide to Life, which was a look into Mabel's unique and often hilarious view of the world around her and how her style can improve it, Fixing It with Seuss, where Seuss did elaborate repair jobs, and a few other scattered ones involving Antics with the Pines family and the other townsfolk. These shorts did numbers. They would consistently get millions of views across all of Disney's international accounts, meaning Disney would continue to do them for a lot of their other shows up until The Owl House. Even before they aired, like with the DuckTales reboot.
Junior Woodchuck Guidebook, you truly have the answer for everything.
And because this is Gravity Falls, there were some hidden codes in these shorts too, mainly in Dipper's, but more on that later. While these shorts were a good little snack to hold fans over, there was still clamoring for the full buffet that was expected to be season 2, which was finally set to air in August of 2014. As the season finally started hitting the airwaves, it was clear the writers were going above and beyond now that they had a dedicated audience watching and a reputation for making quality television. Season 1 was pretty great, but season 2 had bigger threats, higher stakes, a wide array of new monsters and anomalies for the group to encounter, and more secrets and mysteries to unravel. By this point, the crew knew their audience, and decided that while there would be stops to have some wacky fun, they were going into the season ready to dive deeper into the mystery, with a much heavier emphasis on sowing deception and uncovering new secrets. There's even a stronger dedication on including codes and ciphers. On top of the code at the end of the credits, each episode now has a code entered at the very end of the credits, a stinger that looks like a page from the journal with a more elaborate code to decipher on it. It's said that there was a saying in the writer's room of Gravity Falls: Season 1, season fun, season 2, season continue. Itty. Because of this, unlike in the last video, we can be a bit more linear when going over the events of the season. It might seem like I'm skipping over some iconic episodes or big moments, since there was also an active effort from the creative team to do more dedicated character episodes, but we'll be saving more in-depth discussion on some of those episodes for when we cover the characters in full in future videos. So don't worry. Their time will come. For now, the season 2 premiere, Scary-oke, picks up right where the first season left off, with Stan in the secret underground lab in front of whatever this massive device he activated is. We still don't know what this is or what Stan is doing with it, but he's still gonna keep this under wraps, keeping up the ignorant facade he has all this time, especially in front of the kids. While Dipper and Mabel remain unaware of what's going on right under their noses, Dipper becomes much more vigilant in trying to unlock the secrets of Gravity Falls and discover the identity of the author. Laid out on this conspiracy board that looks a lot like how I structured the season 1 video. I swear that was unintentional. Scary-oke is doing a lot of heavy lifting for its first half, but in true Gravity Falls fashion, it does it in a way that feels effortless. The main conflicts for Season 2A are set up. The kids are trying to uncover something, Stan is trying to hide something. The Pines family grows to care more for each other, but are also hiding from each other more than ever before. This device, that we find out is a portal, creates a ticking clock as it needs time to charge up for whatever its intended purpose will be, while Dipper, Mabel, and their recruited friends work harder and get better at taking on hidden threats. On a story level, it instantly raises the stakes. Signs are there that answers will be coming, but they won't be discovered without a price. But at least Mabel is there to let everyone know that in the middle of all this, there'll still be time for laughs.
Lord Mystery Ham is on the case. I play by my own rules, what?
I don't know why I tell you things.
As if all that wasn't enough, we're also introduced to a branch of government agents investigating Gravity Falls, assigned to look into strange energy emissions caused by the activation of the portal. An official and imposing pair of antagonists that just increase the forming divide in the Pines family. Dipper sees this as an opportunity to legitimize his own investigations, while Stan, naturally, wants them as far away from here as possible. They're a great inclusion to up the unknown existing tension, so to speak. This outside entity could cause a lot of problems if they figure things out before anyone else does. Though the agents are reluctant to take Dipper's claims about the strangeness of Gravity Falls seriously, and even after 20-odd episodes of the show, it's hard to blame them.
Leprechaun? I can't be the only one that thinks that's not funny.
I can confirm, not funny.
But this season won't just be laced with deceit. Truths will come to light, even by force. Usually by force. In this case, said force is a zombie invasion. Yes, actual zombies this time, not a half-dozen creepy gnomes in a smelly hoodie. That Dipper summons, trying to prove to these agents that these supernatural creatures chronicled in the journal are real, which he, definitely proved. Good work there, Dipper. At first, it seems like Dipper and Mabel are going to have to deal with this on their own like last time, with Stan being too distracted working on the portal. But just when it seems like this thing is going to be the latest excuse to keep Stan out of the main story and keep the lives of the Pines family separated, a major change happens. Turns out when the twins really need their grunkle, he'll come running. Or punching. Man, the perception of Grunkle Stan certainly changed after this scene. I can't quite explain it. You kinda had to be there. Or type this tag into your social media of choice if you're morbidly curious. More importantly, this forces Stan to come clean, that he does know about the paranormal things in Gravity Falls and was lying to keep the kids away from it. An admirable and futile effort, Stan. But together, they are able to defeat the zombie horde with the power of karaoke. A very Gravity Falls solution indeed. It is good to be back. It's a nice resolution because just when it seems like there'll be a permanent divide in this newfound family, we're reminded how much stronger they are when they work together. Stan doesn't become involved in every supernatural adventure the kids have, but the fact that he can be offers a lot more freedom to the creative team to put Stan in some wild situations alongside the family, strengthening their connection and having more fun with the premise. But they are still leading separate lives. They're willing to be more honest with each other, but they still have their secrets. While Stan continues to work in the basement unknowingly at night, Dipper and Mabel set out on their own investigations unknowingly by daylight, with the promise that this season will have even more mysteries to explore while hiding the greatest mystery from our protagonists. The man downstairs is very clever. Can he hide his plans forever? Season 2 proceeds pretty traditionally for Gravity Falls for the next several episodes, with some episodes dedicated to unlocking more clues and asking more questions regarding the nature of Gravity Falls and the author of the journals in between the usual shenanigans. Those shenanigans, though, are peppered with a lot of the eccentric creativity that gave Gravity Falls its appeal. Like meeting an elaborate society that keeps a mini golf course running, or discovering that stop-motion animation is just living monsters made of plasticine, or making a clingy, psychotic dating sim anime girl. Yeah, Rumble McSkirmish has got nothing on Giffany. Or the reveal that the Gravity Falls version of Cupid is a dirty rock star, tied with the Minotaur for the show's most obnoxious creation. It's the kind of stuff that's familiar, but just the right amount of weird for Gravity Falls, drawing from the natural mystery and belief in magic you have as a kid to discover unusual things in the world. It's a lot of the stuff that made Gravity Falls charming in the first place, ramped up a bit in absurdity, creativity, and sometimes terror. And Dipper and Mabel continue to encounter some of the weirdest stuff there is. The first half of season 2 is a lovely blend of antics and mystery. I think it's a much more even divide than season 1, which, as creepy and mysterious as it could get, was much heavier on the silly stuff. People were noticing something much more sinister brewing underneath the events of season 1, and this is where it starts to hit a boil. So let's talk a bit more about those developments. We find out early on this season that several pages of Journal 3 have additions written in invisible ink, added by the author to hide some of the journal's secrets from prying eyes. So this book, that Dipper thought he had exhausted for information, turns out has many more clues to uncover. But in true journal fashion, it continues to be not super helpful.
This book is gonna save our lives.
Advice.
Oh, seriously?
Like the rest of the journal, this is only used occasionally throughout the season, but it gets featured the most in the episode Into the Bunker. Returning to the hollow metal tree where Dipper found the journal, with this new information, the gang discovers an underground bunker, full of supplies to survive for several decades and multiple layers of elaborate security, complete with an abandoned laboratory. It adds a foreboding threat to this entire mystery. There was obviously some paranoia laced in some of the entries in the journal we'd already seen, but between the invisible ink pages and such a fortified setup for an apocalyptic worst-case scenario, it adds legitimacy to the author's warnings, and therefore, a more terrifying what-if the answers we seek are brought to the surface after someone worked very hard to bury them. We're also pretty consistently reminded this season of what those threats could potentially be. Take the agents, Powers and Trigger. Dipper not only confirmed, but enhanced their suspicions about this town, and that something dangerous is going on here. So while they don't play a part for several more episodes, they are always around. Gravity Falls has always had an incredible attention to detail, planting silly or mysterious things in the background, hoping to perk up the attention of eagle-eyed viewers. By season 2, they knew that worked all too well. They knew how closely we were looking and took advantage of that. In most of the episodes of Season 2A, Powers and Trigger can be seen in various places watching and spying on the Pines family when they're out and about. You can even see a bug from them planted in the shack. At the play or at the fair, I always see them standing there. Dressed in black, they're on my lawn, but when I turn my head, they're gone. This felt like Gravity Falls mastering one of their own tricks, using their propensity for dropping details and Easter eggs in the background to punctuate an essential piece of the story. It makes sense that these secret agents would always be around but remain unseen by our main cast, but it continues the reward for that section of the audience who's looking for signs of trouble. A sign that the agents aren't forgotten, and a constant reminder of the looming danger present. A more overt threat, though, is of course everyone's favorite equilateral enemy, Bill Cipher, making his incredibly anticipated return in the episode Sock Opera. As we went over in the last video, Bill had a mysterious debut in Season 1. We didn't know what he was, what he wanted, or what his history with Gravity Falls or the Pines family was, just that he had one. But it was clear that he knew much more than he was letting on, and with this return, he teases Dipper with that knowledge to manipulate him. See, back in the bunker, the kids find their first big clue to the mystery since finding the journal, an old laptop with vague ownership, dusty hardware, and the potential to contain more answers on the other side of its CRT screen by entering a password Dipper has no hope of decoding on his own. But damn if he doesn't try his best. So, Bill senses a Faustian opportunity in the air and swoops in to say hello. Bill definitely comes off as more nefarious in this appearance. There were suspicions that he was dangerous back in Dreamscapers, but it was mostly by reading between the lines, not so out in the open. This time, however, he's more antagonistic, actively sabotaging Dipper's attempts to discover more about Gravity Falls or the author. Two things Bill seems to have some sort of investment in, which again was hinted at before, but having it more directly said definitely makes his role as a threat more clear. The extent of his power only gets more terrifying. Not only can he be really convincing to get people on his side or to do what he wants, but turns out he can possess living bodies if the host allows, even indirectly.
Bill Dipper! Bipper!
Do not Google that if you value your innocence. Bill ends up using this power to destroy the laptop and attempt to get rid of the journal. I can't help but look at this scene where Bill destroys the laptop, the only major lead we've had in this mystery from the kids' perspective, as the crew once again dangling that sweet carrot filled with the enriching vitamins of answers to our inquiries, only to crush it into a million pieces right in front of our eyes. This is torturous. Why do I love it? Bill still doesn't necessarily see Dipper or Mabel as a threat, but definitely as a thorn in his side he has to remove. Even in a minuscule way, they're interfering with big plans he has for the future. What that has to do with the town, the family, or even the author is still unclear, but in one episode, Bill went from an ominous yet perplexing presence to an active yet cryptic threat. He was up to something, and it gave us yet another reason for the characters to be more suspicious of their surroundings. No puppet strings can hold me down, so patiently I watch this town. Abnormal soon will be the norm. Enjoy the calm before the storm. Despite Bill's best efforts, though, the laptop does offer a crucial piece of information to discovering the author's identity.
McGucket Labs? Wait, Old Man McGucket?
You might not notice if you're a newer fan, but Old Man McGucket being the author was a decently popular fan theory. Not the most popular, but enough that it seemed convincing at the time. Dipper's evidence is even a lot of the same things people had raised questions about. However, this connection does lead to a very tangled web unfurling in the episode Society of the Blind Eye. Back in Gideon Rises, the code in the credits when deciphered read "Search for the Blind Eye." No one really knew what that meant, and there was nothing else to go off of for a while since it was the end of the season. Then, in the online shorts, every episode of Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained ended with a scribbled on journal-like page. Once they were all revealed, they turned out to be puzzle pieces that, when assembled together, made this image, referred to as the blind eye. The same symbol can be seen in the background in the beginning of season 2 a couple of times as well, becoming yet another thing lurking in the shadows. Here, we learn what the blind eye truly is, the name for a cult-like secret society of memory erasers. Formed by people many years ago who couldn't cope with the strangeness that roams Gravity Falls, so rather than try to understand these things, or move, they found a way to forget them, living in blissful ignorance. Achieved with a gun that can erase specific memories from any mind it's fired at. Eventually, this evolved from a voluntary decision made by a select few to something the society enacts on anyone who sees anything related to the supernatural against their will. Yeah, kinda shocked they missed Dipper and Mabel all this time. In fact, they missed them entirely because the kids wound up ambushing them instead of the other way around. But they've gotten to pretty much everyone else. Not only do we see them forcefully erasing the memories of side characters, but even more familiar faces are full-on members. Though, to be fair, choices like Toby Determined and Gideon's dad make a lot of sense for people who would find this appealing. This is such a fantastic inclusion, because it explains one of the mysteries we discussed in part 1, why so many of the townsfolk in Gravity Falls don't comment on or even seem to notice the weirdness that litters this place. They could have just hand-waved it as the town consisting of dumb, oblivious adults, which is true, but the reveal that it's also due to a secret society erasing knowledge of the supernatural against people's wills in the name of bettering their lives is so much stronger. It's something that didn't really need an explanation, but it's so much better for its inclusion. But what does any of this have to do with Old Man McGucket? Well, when the gang confront him about possibly being the author, we realize that McGucket is more despondent at his position in life than originally believed. His random fits of nonsensical madness are due to the fact that long ago, something messed with his mind. He can't answer any of their questions because he doesn't remember anything from his past until about 30 years ago. The only thing in the journal he recognizes, immediately, is the blind eye symbol. Old Man sleeping on the green can't help but wonder what he's seen. The gang set out on this mission to find the society in the hopes of recovering McGucket's memories, which they wind up doing physically because the gun saves the memories it erases in a canister that they store away for reasons, maybe blackmail or to play again for their own amusement. I don't really know. Some of the mechanics of this thing don't make a lot of sense, but it's scary enough to stand on concept alone. Dipper even points out how damaging what the society is doing is because of how McGucket turned out, but it's hard to get remorse from a group of memory erasers.
Don't you feel bad about that?
Maybe a little. But not anymore.
So instead, they force their way out and disband the society by giving them a taste of their own medicine. Hooray! Now with McGucket's memories in hand, we get more context as to why something with his name on it was in the bunker, who McGucket really was and is. And it's... oh jeez.
My name is Fiddleford Hadron McGucket, and I wish to unsee what I have seen.
So, surprise, surprise, McGucket is not the author, but he did work for the author, developing a device that would become the portal until something went wrong. Whatever happened was apparently so bad and made McGucket regret his choices so much that he quit the project and invented the memory gun to forget the part he played in the author's work. With the relief he felt at that mental burden being lifted, he formed the Society of the Blind Eye because he believed it would help others with their own burdens they can't do anything about. But we see the negative effects of erasing too many memories. McGucket becomes so reliant on the memory gun that in the span of just a couple of years, he becomes the raving maniac we've known him as since. With hints that, as hard as he tried, he may not have forgotten everything.
Yuru! Zerxivy! Gersmatov!
This is one of the most incredible scenes in the entirety of Gravity Falls. With a single scene, McGucket went from a throwaway joke of a character to one of the most tragic and beloved figures in the entire show. We'll talk much more about McGucket's actions and downfall when we get to the character section, but let's look at how we got here. Because in retrospect, this makes a lot of sense. We've known since his debut in the second episode that McGucket was an eccentric engineer who took things to a ridiculous scale to prove a point. It was such brilliant foreshadowing to this reveal that he used to be a scientist ahead of his time, and getting tangled up with the wrong people led to his descent into madness and disgrace, giving us a closer connection to the author and confirmation that what he was dealing with was dangerous and could ruin lives. But here's the kicker. This was not part of the plan. McGucket was never meant to be anything more than a joke character, not meaningful to the mystery or story in any way. During the hiatus, as fans were putting together the show's secrets ahead of time, Hirsch and the team realized their big mistake when crafting this mystery. They didn't include a red herring, someone who can seem suspicious but wasn't the real culprit. So they decided to essentially put one in retroactively. McGucket had enough eccentricities to be believable, but to make it more convincing, Hirsch pulled perhaps the most elaborate prank possible on his fanbase. If you don't know, strap in, this is a good story. In April of 2013, while the first season was still being released, this photo, supposedly taken by a sneaky fan taking a tour of the Disney TVA offices, leaked online, of a younger version of Fiddleford McGucket with 6 fingers, writing in one of the journals. The original post on 4chan was taken down after a couple of days, but that didn't stop this damning image of McGucket from spreading like wildfire. Hirsch even expressed anger at the leak in a quickly deleted tweet. The twist? The leaker was in fact Hirsch himself. Yes, Alex Hirsch and some crew members created and leaked this fake screenshot of McGucket presumably being the author to throw fans off the scent of the real answers. They even leaked a legitimate screenshot from Gideon Rises to make it more convincing. While there were fans who questioned its legitimacy, it did cause a lot of ripples and skepticism as it was intended to. It was a very crafty way to mess with the online community in a way that's not mean, just using the tools you've got to your advantage. It was a ridiculous amount of effort to pull off, but it was executed to perfection, and it never ceases to impress me the heights this team would go to heighten the experience with this show on every possible level. Society of the Blind Eye doesn't quite answer any of the main questions, but it makes the overall mystery richer with its existence. That whatever happened in the past had a wider reach, and the after effects are felt to this day. While it's subtle, I notice that things do shift a bit in the town of Gravity Falls, with the society disbanded and forgotten. It seems like the town has become more aware of supernatural occurrences, with varying reactions of surprise or acceptance. I noticed this mainly in the episode Northwest Mansion Mystery, where Dipper appears to have developed a reputation for being able to handle the paranormal. It feels like a subtle nod to say that as the mystery is uncovered, things will change. How fitting then the Society of the Blind Eye ends with reminding us that there's a chance of history repeating itself right under our feet, with this portal seeming more active now. Huh. I wonder where that stuff wound up.
They could have gone into any one of these.
It was a sign once again that while the mystery wasn't the main focus of most episodes, it was a shadow lurking in the back of every event this season, affecting things around it. Things that are foreshadowed might have unexpected payoffs, and there's constant reminders like Stan getting an injury while working on the portal that he has bandaged for the next several episodes, becoming a ticking clock that we get more reminders of as the season progresses, until it turned into a literal ticking clock. Northwest Mansion Mystery is a very self-contained episode, all things considered, and definitely one we'll talk about more in future parts, but in its final minute, it becomes this rush of warnings that everything that's been brewing in the background is about to burst to the surface all at once. Stan is not what he seems, Stan is not what he seems, Stan is not what he seems. So, as a quick recap as we hit the halfway point of Season 2, after all the clues we've added since the show returned, here's what we know. The author was a visiting researcher who came to Gravity Falls to investigate the paranormal. These studies eventually led to him and McGucket developing and building the portal. Then, something happened. likely something bad. Whatever it was caused McGucket to leave and forget everything, and the author becoming mad and paranoid, eventually disappearing and hiding his journals, which were discovered later on by Dipper and through unknown circumstances, Gideon and Stan. The catalyst for these events occurred 30 years in the past, a time referenced constantly this season as the point where major changes happened.
30 long years, and it's all led up to this.
We haven't seen readings like this for 30 years.
That six-fingered nerd hasn't been himself in 30 years.
Everything before 1982 was just a blur.
Now in the present, the story behind what really happened 30 years ago is attempting to be uncovered by Dipper and Mabel, with characters like the agents Bill Cipher and Stan having a very vested interest in either preventing or recreating those circumstances from all those years ago, the repercussions of which will be a big focus of the second half of Season 2, leading us into the most groundbreaking episode of Gravity Falls, the mid-season finale, Not What He Seems.
Hold it!
Okay, I know I've been kind of cavalier with spoilers in these videos because this is a retrospective on the show, and you can't exactly discuss the story of a mystery without giving most of it away. But this is the only place where I will issue a spoiler warning. If you are watching this video and somehow have not watched Gravity Falls and are even mildly curious about checking the show out, stop here. Go watch it, yes, the whole show, and come back once you have. I will not deny someone who hasn't seen the show the experience that is this episode. Please trust me, it's worth going in blind on this one because it is the bedrock of why Gravity Falls is a life-changing experience for many. Do not let me rob you of that. Alright, let's go.
You don't know your uncle at all.
Brand new Gravity Falls.
We were only a little over halfway through the season, but it was clear that from the aggressive promotions to the title being a callback to the very first cipher in the show, that Stan is not what he seems, to opening with a countdown to that machine's long-awaited activation, this episode was going to be a game changer. And it absolutely was. On the day the portal is meant to activate and do whatever Stan has been warning it to do, the agents finally strike, now with a reason to arrest Stan and raid the shack, claiming he stole several barrels of nuclear waste. From that moment on, the episode does everything in its power to make Dipper and Mabel, and even us, doubt Stan. At first, the kids don't believe that even Stan would do something like this, and in their typical determined and resourceful way, do everything they can to prove his innocence. Only to realize that, no, he did do what these agents are claiming. And if they're right about that, what else could they be right about? Is he as dangerous as they say? Do they really not know their great uncle as well as they think? While Dipper and Mabel, especially Mabel, want to believe that's not true, the more they dig into this, the more their belief in Stan starts to falter when they discover a box full of fake IDs going back decades and a newspaper clipping with a pretty damning headline. This is an incredibly shocking set of events, but it's also kind of cool to see them look into this. Like I said back in part 1, Stan was a big mystery in the show that went unnoticed by our resident mystery twins. It was exciting to see them ask these questions and raise these doubts about Stan, and finally discover the secret entrance and walk around the mysterious underground lab. But in the process, they uncover more evidence against Stan that even took viewers aback. The setup for the mystery has been vague enough that the seeds of doubt start to be planted not just in the kids and later Sue, but also the audience. It's not a case of waiting for them to find the obvious answer to all of this. Even if you had a theory that you were so confident was right, the episode throws everything at the characters and the audience in such rapid succession and a time limit to discover the truth to make you question your own assumptions alongside Dipper and Mabel. The group even run through some of the popular theories surrounding Stan when they're trying to work out what's going on.
Why would he have those journals?
Maybe he's the author.
Or maybe he stole them from the author.
Case in point, the joke around Stan all this time is that he's a lousy con man, always trying to cheat his way out of a problem, but barely being able to ever get away with it. So to not only see it's just a long track record of deception, but watch him pull off such a smooth escape from the clutches of the authorities is one, awesome, like it gives the zombie fight a run for its money, and two, adds to this idea that Stan isn't what he's appeared to be all this time. This is the most intense scenario the show has presented so far. Stan possibly being a grifter who killed the real Stan and stole his life and identity is a heavy idea for Breaking Bad, let alone a Disney cartoon. At this point, we don't know anything for sure about Stan. Our heroes only get limited information of what Stan's done, and from that have to decide how they feel feel and what to do about that at the most crucial moment possible, because being wrong has consequences far too great. Here's what we do know, that the portal is minutes away from being fully activated, and that it could be cataclysmic if it does. There are huge warnings about the machine in the journals, and McGucket starts remembering how dangerous the portal is, and when he gets info on the countdown, he runs away in pure fear, not to be seen again until the series finale, breaking the hearts of all of his newfound fans. What follows is a masterful collision of some of the show's biggest mysteries and relationship tensions, made more suspenseful due to the portal causing shifts in physics in the surrounding area. In this major climactic conflict, gravity literally falls. Dipper tries to be the hero in all this, letting his suspicions guide him to stopping Stan at all costs and shutting the portal down. Stan bursts in, practically begging the kids to still trust him and leave the portal alone. We've seen a lot of different sides to Stan in this episode than we ever have, and at this point, it's tough to deduce what is the most genuine. Seuss just wants to protect these kids he's grown to care about, even if it's going against the person who brought them together in the first place, but in the end, the outcome to this will be decided by Mabel. It's a heart-wrenching dilemma, but incredibly portrayed, accompanied by some of the most stunning visuals the show has ever produced, as Mabel deals with her complicated feelings with a loud ticking clock and Dipper and Stan shouting in her ears, putting her at a crossroads between faith and logic. With no real reasoning beyond how she feels, Mabel makes perhaps the most important decision in the entirety of Gravity Falls.
Uncle Stan?
6, 5.
I trust you.
There's a reason Not What He Seems is so incredibly well regarded. It is objectively the best episode of the show. Everything that's been building up in the background, everything everyone has tried to hide or ignore or dismiss, every moment lacking trust and honesty leads to this near world-ending conflict that came down to a newly formed family being pushed to the brink. After several minutes of powerful visuals, pounding orchestrations, and some of the most tense, difficult choices between the characters, everything goes quiet once the countdown reaches 0. With just a moment of calm to prepare, 1.5 million people lean closer to their screens to see a hooded figure emerge as the light of the portal flickers out behind him. Slowly the figure makes his way across the dilapidated laboratory, stopping in front of Journal 1 and placing his 6-fingered hand on it to retrieve it. With little time to speculate or process this, it is revealed who this masked man is.
The author of the journals. My brother.
Let's rewind.
Back in the Time Traveler's Pig, when Dipper and Mabel are hopping randomly through time, they briefly wind up at the shack several years in the past. As they get zapped away, someone pokes their head out for a second to investigate the commotion. Most would assume that this is Stan in the past, seems pretty straightforward, but eagle-eyed viewers notice some strange differences between this man and Grunkle Stan. He has a cleft in his chin and wears different glasses. Those could easily be explained away though. People change their glasses all the time, and Stan's current stubble could be hiding the cleft. Then came Carpet Diem, and we saw those same glasses again, abandoned in the dusty study that already didn't feel like the rest of Stan's home, and snatched by Stan before anyone could notice them. When he's seen staring at them thoughtfully while ignoring the supernatural shenanigans going on in the other room, their significance became a bit more prominent, and suspicions were raised. Fans had noticed some things that were off for quite some time. When we first see the license plate of Stan's car in Legend of the Goblin Walker, it reads STNLYMBL, logically an abbreviated way to say Stanley Mobile. But Stan's name is Stanford, according to Gideon in the Deed for Legality. So why does it say that? You might think it was a mistake on the crew's part, but they don't make mistakes. Except when they do. And that plate remained consistent from that point forward, so that pretty much solidified it. And you know, back in Headhunter, Stan sure got attached to that wax duplicate of himself. He was even incredibly startled when he first saw it. Sure, this could be a natural surprise and an inflated ego, but what if it's something more? What if he was shocked to see someone there that looked like him that shouldn't be there? What if he connects with it and eventually mourns the loss of such a figure because it reminds him of someone else? Someone no longer around. In fact, there seems to be a lot of mirror-like imagery surrounding Stan, and when Bill recalls having encountered someone named Stan Pines, his memory of the man is wearing the round-rimmed glasses. Further still, in one of the looks into Stan's childhood in the same episode, there's a kid in the bleachers whose face is covered by a book but has the same hairstyle as Stan did as a kid, complete with the signature Pine's family hair tuft thing. All you have to do from there is remember that Dipper and Mabel are twins. Twins are likely to run genetically in a family bloodline and are commonly believed to skip a generation, and thus the theory is formed. Grunkle Stan has a long-lost twin brother. This was a theory that was crafted by the community over the span of nearly the entire first season, but the most famous and comprehensive guide to all the clues is probably from Tumblr user Pretty Impone. The original post is no longer up, but I will put a link to the archive version I was able to retrieve from the Wayback Machine in the description. The connection from Stan has a twin brother to Stan's brother is the author was a bit harder for me to track the origins and progression of. The oldest instance I could find of it with it being theorized was in this Reddit post, but by the time season 1 ended, the major theory for the show's main mystery was that Stan had a long-lost twin who was also the author of the journals. And Alex Hirsch and the Gravity Falls team were very aware that they had been found out. To their credit, the reason they had been found out is because it is a well-laid-out mystery. The clues are so subtle that if you aren't paying attention, you can miss them easily. The problem was that they gathered an audience that had been conditioned to look for clues and read into the details. And I think even the people behind the show were surprised at how much crowdsourcing there was to figure out the major mysteries of the show long before they tell us the answers. Going into season 2, knowing most of the fanbase had figured it out or believed those who did figure it out and shared their theories, the GF team could have done one of two things. They could have course-corrected and changed the payoff to the mystery to something that no one could have possibly predicted to still get a shock, or they could stick to their guns and follow their original plan. And thankfully, they chose the latter. There seems to be a fear when laying out a mystery that if the audience can guess it, it's a bad mystery. But the reveal that Stan did indeed have a long-lost twin brother, the author of the journals, was an amazing reveal because it's satisfying above all else. If you're a casual viewer, it's a big shock, and if you were deep into the community or followed the clues to try and guess the mystery ahead of time, it rewards all that hard work crafting theories and following the breadcrumbs the show lays out without getting misguided. There's a satisfaction to being able to uncover the mystery beforehand that I feel like is underappreciated, and I say that as someone who didn't believe the Stan twin theory. I thought it was ridiculous.
Could it have been twins?
No.
Why not?
Because it's never twins.
Maybe it was a secret twin.
A what?
You know, a twin that nobody knows about. This whole thing could have been planned.
Since the moment of conception, how breathtakingly prescient. It is never twins, Watson.
Yeah, I posted this the night Not What He Seems aired. But with the theory now confirmed, that in itself created a new dilemma. What happens now? Not only is this now the answer to the show's biggest mysteries, but fans had time to construct a version of events surrounding the alleged brother's past that created these mysterious circumstances in the first place. How Stan and his brother wound up in Gravity Falls, what their relationship was like, and what caused this brother to vanish. With the large production gaps only becoming a bigger playground to speculate about this twin brother and what happened to him. There was no shortage of versions of the history of Stan and his brother and the events that led to him being lost and Stan searching for him. Based on what little the show gave us, from the small clues, to decipherable but still cryptic journal entries, to the inclusion of McGucket in this history, which shaped theories and scenarios significantly. At the time of airing, the following episode, A Tale of Two Stans, might have been the show's most important episode. Now the twist of the mystery was finally revealed, it was time to explain how we got here and what happened. To an audience who already had many specific ideas of what that history was.
I'm hoping all this aligns exactly with my fanfic, Stan. If not, I will be very disappointed.
There was a lot of pressure on this one at the time of its broadcast, 4 months after Not What He Seems aired. God, sometimes you Disney Plus bingers don't know how good you have it. Not What He Seems ended on the reveal of who the author is, without saying a word and only taking a few steps to unmask himself. In that gap, as we did, everyone had an idea of how this reunion would look once the dust settled. So, let's play a game. Of the popular choices of what Stan's brother would do next, did you think he'd A. Give his brother a tearful hug, B. Collapse from the strain of whatever he faced on the other side of the portal, or C. Punch Stan in the face? If you get C, congrats, you were right. You win emotional scarring from this point forward.
Brother! Oh, ow!
Boy, that escalated quickly.
A Tale of Two Stands is a dense episode. It is the longest single episode of the entire show. It goes over decades of history surrounding the show's two most complex characters, and like I said, there was a lot of pressure to make this backstory worth the build-up. But it wastes no time dropping some major bombs, like finding out who Dipper and Mabel's grandfather is.
They're your family, Poindexter. Shermie's grandkids.
We're gonna have to come back to that one. Shermie is a whole other can of worms. Or this hint which foreshadows the reveal of the twins' real names.
I have some questions about all this myself, Stanley.
But your name is Stanford.
Wait, you took my name?
A stubborn, tough New Jersey native, Philbrick wasn't too creative. Having twins was not his plan, so he just shrugged and named both Stan. We learn that as children, Stanley and Stanford were as inseparable as Dipper and Mabel. Maybe even more so since they didn't have any other friends because they were teased and picked on for their differences. Stanford for his 6 fingers, and Stanley for his personality. The two dreamed of fantastical adventures, striving to sail the world and forge a bright future together, on a boat they named the Stan-O-War. Wait a minute. That sounds familiar. Aw man, just when you thought Gobblewonker couldn't get sadder after the McGucket reveal. But as time went on and they grew up, the differences that made them a complete team started to divide them. Stanford is recognized as a prodigy and given the opportunity at a scholarship to a prestigious college called West Coast Tech that would secure him a successful future, but would leave Stanley alone on the other side of the country, dismissed by the adults in his life as a loser who would make nothing of himself. Angered and scared, Stanley takes out his frustration near the science project that will guarantee his brother's scholarship and accidentally breaks it. He tries to cover it up, but Stanford still loses his chance to get into West Coast Tech. He confronts Stanley about this, and in the ensuing fight, their outraged father throws Stanley out of the house and tells him to not come back without the potential millions he just cost his brother. This is arguably the most contested and debated confrontation in the entire series. People took sides and they took them quick. Almost as bad as the Team Cap and Team Iron Man war soon to be caused by Captain America Civil War. I'm simplifying the whole thing here to get to the story beats and how they play out, but rest assured, we will be talking about this extensively when we get to the character section. For now, this is where the Stan twins' lives begin to branch off, and the puzzle pieces of their scattered and mysterious past start to come together and form a cohesive picture. Before finishing high school, cast aside by everyone he's ever cared about, Stanley is left to navigate the world on his own with an impossible goal that he works for the next several years to achieve. This explains why he's so money obsessed and why he's constantly attempting get-rich-quick schemes. It started as this hopefully quick and easy way to make up for this mistake and prove he could be successful. But because Stan is Stan, a lot of his business ventures collapsed pretty quickly, constantly putting him on the run from disgruntled customers, the IRS, and even law enforcement, which explains all the fake IDs, and also how he wound up in a Colombian prison that one time, even if we never find out the specifics. Which is probably for the best. Meanwhile, Stanford winds up in a very subpar college, but due to his high intellect and increasing persistence, he manages to rack up several academic achievements, including a grant to lead his own research in whatever scientific pursuit he wanted. This is how he wound up in Gravity Falls, out of a desire to study anomalies that were strange like he was. The journals acted as research journals to chronicle his strange and interesting findings, and the Mystery Shack was originally Stanford's home and research lab. Watching the journal pages be filled out in real time is one of the most exciting scenes in this episode for me. After how shrouded in mystery they've been concerning who wrote them and why, watching it all be the enthusiastic findings of an ambitious young researcher, and one so close to the family we've been following all this time, feels really satisfying. Dipper gets pretty excited too.
The journals!
I relate. Stanford's ultimate goal, though, is to discover the origin of all this weird phenomena. It doesn't exclusively come from Gravity Falls, but perhaps somewhere else. Which is why the portal was invented, to hopefully find the source of weird anomalies that he can pinpoint, calling in McGucket, who was a college friend of his, to help him with it. On Stanford's end of things, this is when everything goes downhill, realizing the dangers of the machine as he gets close to completing it. McGucket tries to warn him after getting a glimpse of what's on the other side, but Stanford hesitates to destroy his most ambitious experiment. This is where something went wrong, because we know that whatever is on the other side is so horrifying, McGucket went to extreme measures to forget it, and Stanford just opened a door to let it in.
When gravity falls and Earth becomes sky, fear the beast with just one eye.
Disgruntled and alone, Stanford is left to deal with the consequences of his actions, becoming increasingly paranoid at what he's now opened a door to. We're spared the details, at least for now, but all those manic warnings in the journal about being watched or threatened by things he couldn't trust were made in the weeks of isolation he forced himself into, until out of desperation, he called Stanley for help, which Stanley answers without question or hesitation. Even after over 10 years apart and how they left things, Stanley still wants to be there for his brother in a time of clear distress if there's something he can do to alleviate it. That's what makes what follows so much more painful. A lot of tension and confrontation builds in this reunion between the two estranged brothers. Stanley wants to take the chance for things to go back to the way they were, while Stanford wants to focus on his mission and move on. There's a lot of layers to how things escalate here that, again, we're going to cover deeper in the character section, but the core of this reunion is this underlying tragedy that both Stanley and Stanford are so focused on their own hurt that they can't see eye to eye, resulting in them fighting over Journal 1 until their roughhousing conveniently hits all the right buttons and switches to activate the portal, but neither of them notice until it's too late.
Stanley! Stanley, help me! Do something! Stanley!
Stanford?
Watching the events play out represents what makes Tale of Two Stans so brilliant. It reveals the true cause of all the strife in the show up to this point. Almost every version of the events conceived before the episode aired, and probably what most people imagine when watching the show for the first time, involves some mysterious third party forcing the events that led to Stanford disappearing, with only one of his journals to guide Stanley in finding him. But in actuality, this whole disaster is caused by two people, once so close, being divided for so long that the rift between them only gets larger and larger until they get so careless that Stanford builds this potentially world-ending device to prove a theory, and Stanley pushes him through it, forcing them as far apart as possible, with nothing left of his brother but a journal and the glasses we saw back in Carpe Diem. Boy, good thing Ford had a spare pair with him, huh? It's a deeply tragic, breath-stealing chain of events that paints everything that's happened so far in a new light, including why the Mystery Shack exists in the first place. It was Stanley's way of trying to keep his brother's house until he could find a way to rescue him. He stumbled into the idea of becoming a tour guide, and it turned out to be an occupation that embraced his talents that often got him scolded or arrested or chased away by angry mobs, taking his brother's name and faking his own death to make things less complicated legally and explain the loss of one twin. But even though he now had a home and a good job, Stanley never forgot the main reason he's here, working non-stop over the last 30 years to bring Stanford back home, until he was finally able to make some real progress when he got the other two journals thanks to Dipper and Mabel. For what is essentially exposition dump the episode, it not only adds long-desired context to the mysterious elements throughout the series, but gives them weight and importance beyond answering questions. And having the author be a long-lost member of the Pines family makes the whole thing feel more personal and significant, and most of all, gives the mystery legs to move forward after it's been solved, which is exceedingly rare in shows like this. Usually once a puzzle is solved, its pieces are left to rot in a corner or be disposed of. Good example, the agents. Yeah, remember them? A whole SWAT team of government agents that have been searching the shack this whole time because we told this really long and complicated backstory right after the portal was activated? Well, now that they have served their story purpose, they're quickly brushed away. Which is fine, I don't think we needed them anymore either, and in true Gravity Falls fashion, it's done with the help of a clever callback.
Of course!
It's quick, but multi-purpose. It gets rid of the agents, shows how clever and resourceful Stanford is, and reintroduces the memory gun, which Dipper has apparently been carrying all this time. I'm sure that won't be important later. But the agents are gone, the portal didn't tear the universe apart, and now the author is a new cast member we get to play with. 30 years and now he's back. The mystery in the Mystery Shack. But after some levity, reality does set back in, and it's clear that the tension between Stan and Ford remains. There's a lot of bad blood between them, and that's not going to go away no matter how much Stan sacrificed to save his brother. It becomes a really complicated issue that they aren't ready to resolve yet, and with the ultimatum that Ford will be taking his home and name back once the summer is over, it really makes any reconciliation less possible. All this resentment towards two twins who are so different but used to be so close is inevitably noticed by Dipper and Mabel, making them worried that as they grow up, they'll wind up the same way. A fear that becomes more and more prevalent in the second half of season 2. Now, as much as I would love to save all the discussion on these conflicts and concerns for the character section, it can't really be avoided anymore. Ford's inclusion fundamentally changes the relationships in the Pines family and the direction of the series from this point on. While there are still some secrets to uncover, the main focus of the show now is if these relationships can be mended and continue to grow before the end of the summer, which is fastly approaching. The next few episodes are all about exploring this new normal in the Pines family now that they have a new member. Now that all the heavy lifting was done introducing Ford, the show can explore their new character, who's mainly keeping to himself in the basement lab. So how are they going to make this distant, mysterious family member connect with an audience?
We must stop everything I've been working on at once and play!
Oh, he's a dork. While it is, to an extent, understandable that Ford's first instinct is to practically lock himself away in the basement and want nothing to do with the shack, as time goes on, he starts to form a connection with the kids, primarily Dipper. And while Dipper has a deep admiration for Ford as the author he's idolized all this time, he finds a kindred spirit with his uncle as well. Someone he connects with and someone who trusts him with bigger mysteries and secrets. There's also the added fun of seeing other characters get to read and use all the journals now, which adds a lot of exciting new information and feels pretty surreal for a while. The dynamics in the shack are shaken up quite a bit. Dipper now has someone to connect with in a way he can't with anyone else. Mabel starts worrying about things she used to be so confident about or just didn't think much about. Stan becomes a bit more closed off as he tries to savor what time he has left with these kids he's grown to love and figure out what his future will look like after the summer. Even Ford is dedicating his time to bringing the events that led him down this destructive path to an end. But that begs the question, if we know the answers to most of Gravity Falls mysteries, what else is there to do? What else could possibly be lurking in the shadows to threaten a family that's already getting rather fragile? Well... With another long-awaited return, Bill Cipher is confirmed to be the main villain of the show. And I know some of you might be sitting there going, well, yeah, duh. But the show got people to draw that conclusion with not much information. While Bill is a terrifying figure on his own, most of the hinting to him being the big bad came from cryptic, subliminal foreshadowing, where he's not there, but always present.
He's been terrorizing us all summer!
Yes, terrorizing you in both of his appearances. Ford's appearance back in his own dimension confirms that Bill has large plans that are about to come to fruition. We knew that Bill had some kind of connection to the author, one that led to him leaving warnings and ramblings of regret and betrayal in codes littered throughout the journals. Ford is reluctant to share what happened, but Dipper's own desire to search for answers gets the better of him, and when he reads Ford's thoughts, he's horrified by what he discovers.
Please, call me a friend.
How Ford's past allyship with Bill is revealed to Dipper and the audience is brilliantly done. Like it not what he seems, the suspense is so high and the reveal is so scary that it makes you doubt your own instincts about the kind of show you're watching and get swept away in the dramatic reveal of Ford possibly being evil, even for a moment. However, thankfully, that's not the case. After this incident, Ford does decide to be honest with Dipper about his history with Bill, that they did in fact used to be friends, or so he thought. Desperate to crack the code on the secrets that linger through Gravity Falls, Ford summoned and consulted Bill, the isosceles imposter posed as a muse, promising to assist Ford in his research. Bill's biggest inspiration to his new friend is the invention of the portal, even offering to continue the work while Ford slept by taking over his mind and body. Oh well, gosh darn gee whiz, wasn't that nice of him. I'm sure Ford won't have any regrets about doing that whatsoever. This was a good idea. Ford believed that the portal would find the main source of weirdness, unlocking all the secrets of the unusual things in the world by tracing their point of origin. But after the test gets McGucket so shaken up he quits, Ford starts to have doubts, and Bill shows his hand. The portal was in fact a gateway. Bill as we know him is confined to the mindscape. Outside of dreams, the only way Bill can interact with humanity is through possession or finding a dimensional gateway. The portal therefore would bring Bill from the nightmare realm to the physical world and make it his new kingdom. Straight up gloating to Ford that he's bringing about the end of the world when he thinks it's too late for his unwitting partner to do anything to stop it. What exactly happened in the time between when Ford discovered Bill's betrayal and when he called Stan to help is left ambiguous, at least in the main series, but the conclusion drawn is that all those messages Ford scribbled in the journal about being watched and not sleeping were to prevent Bill from taking over his body and reactivating the portal, hiding away the journals with the instructions that could do just that, and isolating himself from the outside world until Stan arrived. From the moment Bill's true intentions became clear, Ford's entire life fell apart, only able to rebuild himself with a single-minded mission to atone for the part he played in this doomsday scenario by making sure Bill's plans can never come to pass. A simple man with eager ears may trust the whispers that he hears. In Cipher's game, he needs a pawn. Be sure to know which side you're on. Once again, Bill becomes the missing factor. The part he played in the events of the past shine a much-needed light on the piece of the story shrouded in darkness. It's kind of wild to think that, fun fact, the last Mabel Corn was written in 2 days, a last-minute addition to the show to fill a slot of a scrapped episode, which is crazy to think about because it's so essential from a story and lore standpoint. The circumstances surrounding this reveal set up a lot of essential points going into the show's big climax, with explanations like Ford's history and Bill's motives, to preparations like how Ford did the most rational thing to keep Bill out of his mind, installed a metal plate in his head.
Good one.
Thanks to the kids, though, they come up with a method that can protect them all from Bill's influence while they are inside the shack. And then nearly the entire family goes on a road trip outside of Gravity Falls in the very next episode, and it's like, what? But I want to mention a more subtle moment that is easy to overlook in the chaos of this reveal, but will be integral to the events that unfold in the show's final episodes. What Dipper says when he's backed into a corner, believing he's facing an unpredictable terror.
It's me, Dipper. It's your uncle.
Trust no one. Trust no one.
When confronted by something he thinks is incredibly dangerous, Dipper falls back on the very first warning he received about Gravity Falls. And I don't mean the mosquitoes. This mistrustful motto will become the thing that gets the group in the most trouble. Now, its catalyst is understandable. It comes from Ford's own broken trust from Bill and his paranoia at being watched by him, knowing that under the right circumstances, he's capable of possessing anyone. Information is power, and secrets keep that info safe. And it turns out that bringing Ford back wasn't without consequence. When Stan reactivated the portal, it created a small, unstable rift in space-time, which narratively replaces the portal as the suspenseful ticking clock. Mainly, what will happen if it's no longer contained. Ford has built a trusting bond with Dipper, but swears him to secrecy about the rift and what it is. Which again makes sense for Ford to do, but it becomes obvious that there's going to be consequences to approaching this problem in this way. Dipper's response at the idea of being cornered by Bill becomes a compact version of the dangers of keeping these kinds of things secret. If Ford had been honest about his history with Bill from the start, the limited information Dipper had wouldn't have made things escalate to the point that someone could have gotten hurt. Without clarification, the worst conclusions can be drawn and irrational decisions can be made. As you might have noticed, this isn't the first time this has happened on the show, and as we will see, it won't be the last, as we ramp up to Dipper and Mabel's final days in Gravity Falls. An occasion marked not just by the end of summer vacation and their soon return to their home in California, but their 13th birthday. A big milestone as they get ready for the next phase of their lives after this life-changing summer they've had. But this is where those anxieties about them possibly going in different directions that were started when they saw how Stan and Ford turned out start to rear their ugly head. Dipper sets out on a mission with Ford to attempt to seal the rift for good. And just when you think Gravity Falls was done throwing new discoveries at you, they hit us with a big one.
Shut up.
It was a theory for a while, and the crew swore them off for even longer, but aliens are finally confirmed in Gravity Falls. In fact, the entire valley the town was built on is a giant crater that a long-dormant UFO crashed and settled into. It doesn't really cause any major shifts in the show itself, aside from perhaps one thing we'll go into a little later. It's just a cool addition to fill in some last-minute lore, like how Ford used their technology to build the portal and appropriated their language, as it's the same alphabet used for codes in the journals. On top of the incredible experience of getting to explore an alien spacecraft, Ford takes the time to offer Dipper another big opportunity.
What would you say to staying in Gravity Falls after the summer ends and becoming my apprentice?
Okay, I'm fully aware that people have very strong feelings about Ford offering Dipper this and how this whole conversation plays out, but most of the more divisive talk we're gonna save for the character section. Right now, let's focus on how this plays into one of the biggest themes of Gravity Falls that we haven't really talked about yet. Growing up. The idea of tackling more complicated obstacles and insecurities and finding mature solutions to them is something the twins have faced on a week-by-week basis throughout the show, but the divide caused by this choice on this day is where how they want to grow up becomes the major obstacle of the show. On paper, becoming the author's apprentice seems like exactly what Dipper would want. To skip the rest of childhood and be put in a position that could lead to high respect and acclaim, adventuring and studying alongside someone he admires. And when droids on the ship threatened his uncle, Dipper only proves himself to be ready for this even more by saving him. Dipper becomes ecstatic about what his future holds, meanwhile Mabel starts to dread it. Mabel becomes desensitized as the perfect vision she saw for her future starts to crumble. How the harsh realities of becoming a teenager and things changing contrast with what Disney usually promoted, especially at this point in time.
Why aren't they singing about following their dreams?
This is America's only singing high school. I was as shocked as you are.
Her future is looking miserable, her support system is slowly falling apart, and whenever she tries to reach out to Dipper for reassurance, he's always out of reach to communicate with her. While Dipper is discovering new horizons, Mabel is having her whole world taken away, the final nail in the coffin being when she finds out that Dipper won't be going home with her, deciding to stay in Gravity Falls and leaving her completely alone. As you might have noticed, this is exactly what happened to Stan and Ford all those years ago, the moment when the world was pushing them in different directions. And like before, this fear of the unknown, of an uncertain future that they'll have to face alone, is about to have some disastrous results. Because I have to wonder if anyone else remembers the dread that forms in your stomach when you realize that Mabel grabbed the wrong backpack, and that means she now has the rift. I recall it vividly. I might have footage. That backpack has the rift in it. No. Unfortunately, because of all the secrecy, she doesn't know what it is, and that it shouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Bill is primed and ready with a new puppet to manipulate and con another member of the Pines family into giving him exactly what he wants. Although, how or why Bill possessed Blendon of all people is still perplexing to me. We know Bill needs to make a deal with someone to enter their mind, but how he managed to convince Blendon of this, I have no idea. Especially since we later learn that the Time Paradox Avoidment Enforcement Squadron has Bill listed as an active criminal, so he probably knows who he is. It might have something to do with him conspiring with Gideon in prison, since he apparently made a deal with him that we never learn the terms of, but Gideon doesn't know who Blendon is, so how the hell would that have helped? Look, as much as I'll clearly sing its praises, the show ain't perfect. What matters is that this further demonstrates the dangers of the trust no one mentality. Keeping secrets might seem like the safe option, but not trusting others with important information leads to them not knowing things they should. That could stop them from making immediately regrettable decisions, representing the metaphorical rift with a literal rift. Yes, this is another we'll deal with the controversy in the character section moment, but let's make something perfectly clear right here. If Mabel knew what this thing was, or who she was talking to, she would have never given it away. Never. But she doesn't. She thinks this is a friend-ish wanting to help her. She's alone and desperate and willing to take a chance on the first person offering a solution. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? With this single act of desperation, Bill's plans have come to fruition. In one of the most chilling cliffhangers I've ever seen, Gravity Falls is looked down on by Bill Cipher entering the physical realm and reveling in his conquest. Weirdmageddon has begun. The prophecy seemed far away, but finally we've reached the day. Give up the past, embrace the strange. Everything you care about will change.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
Bill's powers and demented antics that were originally confined to the mind and imagination is now unleashed on an unsuspecting town in full force. It is kind of weird in a good way to see other townsfolk actually talking to Bill and interacting with the supernatural. It'd be more exciting if it wasn't followed by one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen.
How about instead I shuffle the functions of every hole in your face?
Good luck sleeping tonight.
At the start, Weirdmageddon only makes the rift in the Pines family wider. Mabel is captured, Stan is MIA, more on that later, and as Dipper follows forward in the eye of the storm in the hope of stopping Bill's takeover right away, with the same weapon we saw him carrying on his back when he emerged the portal, they are overpowered almost immediately. Bill is now able to counter everything they throw at him with ease, and petrifies Ford in gold. Part 1 of Weirdmageddon takes away all the obvious ways to stop Bill in rapid, terrifying succession. The most shocking to me, though, was... Bill burning the journals is one of the most shocking moments of the show for me. Not only is it Dipper's last possible resource to counter Bill, but just think about it. These are the very items that started this mysterious summer in the first place, and they're wiped away in an instant. While there are still some elements on the show waiting to be resolved, this to me signified the end of the mystery. There's nothing more to chase or discover, because with Bill Cipher in charge, everything bends to his rules. Presumably, this is the end of the line. However, when Dipper's all alone, trying to survive in Bill's apocalypse, all that's on his mind is getting back to Mabel. The thing that unleashed Bill in the first place was the divide caused in our main cast. So as Weirdmageddon gets more dire, the thing that offers the most hope and progress and maybe finding a way to get things back to normal, or as normal as Gravity Falls gets, is by healing the divide. Dipper accomplishes this slowly by reuniting with Wendy and Seuss, who help him get through the more treacherous obstacles of Weirdmageddon. He's able to turn Gideon of all people around for Mabel's sake, and most important of all, he reunites with and tries to work things out with Mabel, who was put in a prison by Bill, but made from her very own imagination to be the perfect utopia for her. A place just as bubbly and colorful and quirky as you'd imagine. Maybe more so. What happens in Mabel Land is very elaborate and involved, and because of that, we're gonna save most of the talk about escape from reality for future parts. What I mainly want to talk about here is what this place represents when it comes to the show's themes about growing up, and how everything surrounding it resolves. Mabel Land is meant to be a place of pure happiness with no doubt or strife. Bill did keep his end of the bargain and gave Mabel exactly what she wanted, just in his own twisted way. As this place actively fights against anyone's attempts to leave by tempting them with their deepest desires, or straight up threatening them to chill out and enjoy it here. When all this fails to work on Dipper, his and Mabel's worldviews are pitted against each other in court. In a land where everything goes Mabel's way, so you can guess how that's working out for Dipper. This court case is not just about maintaining Mabel's perceived happiness in this world she's created, but how the real world has knocked the Mystery Twins down time and time again. And it's hard to argue against that, especially since what Dipper is asking is for everyone to leave a magical paradise and go back to hell, hosted by Bill Cipher. But the trial reveals what they lost sight of for a minute, how they got through whatever life throws at them, by being there for each other, growing at the same time, but in different ways, embracing their differences and making the most of it. They've gotten even closer during their time in Gravity Falls, as the challenges got tougher and they emerged from each one triumphantly together. Where things started to go wrong is when they drifted apart, from Dipper trying to speed through childhood and grow up quicker, to Mabel wanting time to stop in its tracks. Weirdmageddon and Mabel Land forced Dipper and Mabel to see that these paths they've been dreaming about, their bright futures that are so different from each other, are a facade, a metaphorical and now literal bubble they'd be encased in, unable to face adversities that help them grow as much as they have, and reach out or be heard by those that really matter. The challenges of Weirdmageddon allow Dipper and Mabel to grow up in their own way. They are great on their own, but they're at their best together, and this whole ordeal is there to remind them of that before it was too late, which means they're both ready to break free of their fantasies and face whatever awaits them back in Gravity Falls. A bittersweet and heartfelt resolution that helps them prepare to face the unknown, the final adventure of their summer. On November 20th, 2015, just a couple days before Weirdmageddon 2 Escape from Reality was broadcast, Alex Hirsch shared the one and only post on his Tumblr account, formally announcing that Gravity Falls was coming to an end. The third part of Weirdmageddon would be the series finale. Now, those of you who watched the show in the years after it aired are probably thinking, well, sure, that makes sense. The mysteries were being solved, the summer was coming to a close, there was an apocalypse going on. What else was there to do after this? And yeah, a lot of us could see the writing on the wall. It seemed pretty clear narratively that the show was wrapping up, but you need to understand that at the time, Gravity Falls was incredibly popular and acclaimed, only outmatched by Phineas and Ferb in terms of success and popularity for Disney animated television. And Phineas and Ferb already had a long tenure by the time Gravity Falls came along. There was a lot of speculation at the time on if Gravity Falls would be getting a third season, because it just didn't make sense to not keep such a successful show going. In his post, Alex Hirsch explained that this wasn't Disney's decision, this was his. He told the story he wanted to, and he wanted the story to have an ending on his terms. And Disney, thankfully, respected his wishes. I'll touch more on the decision to wrap Gravity Falls up when they did later, but it's important to bring this post up as part of Gravity Falls history. I think every fan at the time was simultaneously riding the high of the Weirdmageddon event, swept up in the spectacle and the emotion, while having this dreaded thought in the back of their mind that there might not be any more Gravity Falls after this, even though we had no confirmation one way or the other until this post. This was the confirmation we all anticipated and the consolation we needed. The show would be over soon, and that was okay. This is how it was meant to be. I commend Alex Hirsch for talking to us directly at the time. I think that really helped make this an easier pill to swallow. Even though I was still a wreck, and this dog dressed as a crayon just makes me sad now. I'm sorry, Alex. It's very cute, but it did not help. This meant that we knew to be prepared for the episode after Escape from Reality. The series finale, Season 2, Episode 20, Take Back the Falls, was set to air on February 15th, 2016.
So I say we band together and take the fight to him!
Now they've made their way into the physical world, Bill and a bunch of his monstrous henchmaniacs have been having an all-out chaotic bash. Bill wants nothing more than to spread his warp madness somewhere new, having made quick work of destroying Gravity Falls, including using the petrified forms of nearly all the townspeople to construct a throne for himself.
Don't worry, they're not conscious anymore, probably.
For a while, it seems like nothing can stand up to Bill and his immense power, so he sets his sights on rebuilding the rest of the world in his image. There's just, one teeny tiny little problem with that plan.
I could get used to it. What?
Turns out Bill is trapped in Gravity Falls. Him and his chaos are confined to the town's boundaries due to a weirdness barrier of some kind. This ties into a sort of explanation for why Gravity Falls is the way it is. Gravity Falls' natural weirdness magnetism. Essentially, Gravity Falls became a hotspot for things that are odd or unusual or straight up supernatural because they were drawn to it like a magnet, which is why Gravity Falls not only has such a high concentration of anomalies, but why those same strange things from around the world are inexplicably drawn to this sleepy Oregon town. Just think of Several Times, or hell, Mermando, and the bizarre set of circumstances that had him wind up in Gravity Falls all the way from the Gulf of Mexico. I know some viewers have wondered if there's an explanation beyond this, if there's something that caused this magnetism that draws the weird to Gravity Falls, but I like that there is no grand plan reason for why this area is the way it is. It's a phenomenon, one you can research and find reasoning behind, but not necessarily an explanation, which can be true to life. There are oddities all around the world, but because of this mysterious force, Gravity Falls has become an epicenter for it. It draws in magical creatures, alien spacecrafts, curious men with rare birth defects, and now locks in a dream demon from spreading his nightmares across the globe. Luckily for Bill, he's got someone imprisoned who's an expert on Gravity Falls. Ford does in fact know a way to collapse the barrier and set Bill free, with an equation somehow, but I thought Ford never cracked the unified theory of weirdness he was studying in Gravity Falls because he got tricked by Bill. Maybe this is some knowledge he came across during his multiverse travels? I don't know. It's kind of weird, but a decent enough incentive for Bill to start putting the pressure on. And oh gosh, oh golly, the ways the fandom have tormented poor Ford with the brief looks into Bill torturing him. Naturally, this creates greater stakes than there already were. To stop Bill, not just to save Gravity Falls and everyone we love here, but to rescue Ford before Bill can get the information from him he needs to take this party global, and hope that his vast knowledge on Bill Cipher can defeat him once and for all. So their task is to find the author. Again. Luckily for Dipper, Mabel, Wendy, and Seuss, it turns out healing the divide in their mystery team spawns even more reunions. So yeah, we finally learn where Stan has been all this time. When Weirdmageddon hit, Stan hid away in the shack, which thanks to the magic barrier they put in place to protect them from Bill's influence, is the only place in town Bill's powers can't touch. He took in a ragtag group of surviving supporting cast members and cameos over the last several days, and they've been cooped up here ever since. This is where you get those classic series finale vibes. Dipper and Mabel, now with more more allies and a way to ward off Bill, rally everyone together and gather up everything they have to fight off Bill's forces long enough to save everyone he has in his clutches. There's so many great little appearances and callbacks in this final battle, making use of tons of the resources the Pines family and their friends have accumulated over the summer. Most notably McGucket, who's back from wherever he ran off to half a season ago. Well, it's nice to have him back at least. Now more kindly present, but mixed with his traditional manic nature, he figures out a way to take advantage of the protection spell to help them take the fight to Bill's fortress. And the result is...
It's the Shacktron, dude!
They made the house into a robot. Fascinating.
Turning the Mystery Shack into a giant robot might just be the coolest thing the show has ever done, as well as the fight that follows. I love this scene. Why? Because giant robots fighting giant monsters are awesome. Japan has known this for ages.
What's an anime? We have much to discuss.
I don't even know what you expect me to say about it. This is the coolest thing ever. They have so much fun with it. And it distracts Bill and his pals long enough for a team led by the Pines family to sneak into the pyramid and rescue everyone. With Ford now reunited with the family, he's able to help them come up with a way to hopefully end Weirdmageddon.
Now, does anyone have a pen, pencil, anything?
Ford, buddy. I know you've had quite the ordeal, but come on, man. Either way, Ford is finally able to reveal and unleash perhaps the only thing that can defeat Bill Cipher for good, leading us to a long-desired payoff.
It's happening!
I mentioned the symbol from the theme song a bit back in the Season 1 video. There's a lot of secrets on it, but the thing that sticks out to a lot of viewers are these 10 symbols encompassing this Gravity Falls themed zodiac. The closer you look, the quicker you see that certain symbols correspond to certain characters. The pine tree on Dipper's hat, the shooting star on Mabel's original sweater, the emblem on Stan's fez. This could just be a cute reference, but as more characters appeared, so did more symbols associated with this wheel. The question mark on Seuss's uniform, the star logo from Gideon's tent of telepathy, the bleeding heart on Robbie's hoodie, even the six-fingered hand on the journal. In a show riddled with ciphers, hidden messages, and cryptic visual cues, connecting these symbols to characters on the show meant the whole picture's significance increased. Mind you, there were some symbols that were a bit less clear on who they belonged to, and over time, certain characters seemed so important that they had to be connected with the wheel in some way, and thus people tried to assign symbols to them with whatever rationale they could. Like a lot of things on Gravity Falls, the significance of the wheel increased when Bill Cipher was properly introduced. We found out that the symbol inside the wheel was a character, that the author saw importance in the Cipher wheel when recording it in Journal 2, and Bill cites the wheel when he first meets Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss.
Ah, Stan's family, we meet at last. Question mark, shooting star, pine tree.
This was direct confirmation that they were in fact tied to the zodiac that was also connected to Bill Cipher. However, there was nothing else beyond that. No other mentions of the Cipher wheel. It was this little hidden gem flashing for a moment in the opening of the show that had over time become the most iconic visual associated with Gravity Falls. While the show continued to not acknowledge it, fans and viewers speculated about it constantly, a tradition that continues whenever someone watches the show for the first time. We were all just waiting to find out what its role in the show would wind up being, and this was that long-awaited moment. But here's the kicker. It's that very speculation and anticipation that gave it meaning, because the Cipher wheel originally meant nothing. I am completely serious. The Cipher wheel was conceived, designed, and presented to be nothing more than a cool image to represent the show. And it did. It did become that, that's for sure. Just way more than I think the crew realized it would. Gravity Falls trained us so well to find codes and mysterious meanings in everything that we wound up creating the very answer we were looking for. The Cipher wheel became so important and people were trying to decipher what it meant for so long that the crew decided to maybe have all that effort not be in vain. Make it part of the show's resolution in some capacity to give us some sense of closure and payoff, which I honestly appreciate in hindsight. You can feel how you want about how it resolved, but they were looking out for us. So what did they come up with? What does the Zodiac mean? Well, Ford found the Zodiac years ago connected to a prophecy that those who represent these cosmic symbols would witness Bill's ultimate demise. Now seeing them all in the pyramid, Ford concludes that assembling the Zodiac members together will be enough to banish Bill for good. Some symbols are very literal, some are more interpretive, and some are an excuse to get a character that wound up being more popular than they expected in on the action. It's a method that metaphorically and literally creates an alliance between characters that would have felt impossible at the beginning of the show, coming together under one cause and purpose, because that kind of unity is the only thing capable of defeating a force like Bill's Cipher. For a solution they came up with after the fact, it's a surprisingly meaningful explanation for what the Zodiac is. It does feel very satisfying after all this time to see the Cipher Wheel play a part in the show and watch it come together as the characters themselves came to the same conclusions we did. However, it does require everyone to come together to stop Bill, and there's a slight problem with that too.
Stanley, get over here. You're the only one left.
You realize this is a bunch of hogwash, right?
Yeah, Stan hasn't exactly been a team player during Weirdmageddon. He became a haven for those who managed to dodge Bill's forces, but it's not to lead some kind of rebellion uprising against their triangular overlord. His plan was to be their leader by having them cater to his needs out of gratitude and eat his apocalypse rations until they were forced to eat each other. Until they find out what's happened to the rest of the town, since thankfully Exposition TV is still running. He gets annoyed when the twins want to lead everyone into a fight he doesn't think they can win, and gets even more frustrated when the mission is to save his brother, the person everyone believes can truly save them. Stan's got a chip on his shoulder right now the size of the Grand Canyon, especially concerning Ford. I can't say I blame him because he already went out of his way to save his brother once before and got no gratitude for it. So when everyone else brushes him aside to focus on saving the twin who they believe can really help them, I get that he's really annoyed and insecure about that. But his agitation is so high right now that when Ford does have a method to stop Weirdmageddon and Bill, Stan stubbornly refuses to complete the Cipher Wheel, just by standing next to his brother and holding his hand. He wants someone to blame Ford for once. He did play a part in all this happening, but pointing fingers and holding grudges is only going to hinder any progress they could make in ending all this. Unlike Dipper and Mabel, who took the time to see each other and realize what was important to them, Stan and Ford refusing to resolve their issues results in tensions reaching their height at the worst possible time.
Grammar, Stanley.
Oh, grammar, Stanley, you!
This instantly gives Bill the upper hand, and an opportunity to destroy any chance they have of using the Zodiac to stop him, leaving just the main Pines family remaining. But even with the odds stacked against them, Dipper and Mabel are still determined to take on Bill however they can, forcing him to lock up the Elder Pines twins while he deals with them. In another scene I'll cover more in depth in the character section, now captured, isolated, and all alone, Stan and Ford are forced to finally put their differences aside and talk things out, even briefly, over a canteen of what I'm sure they told Standards and Practices was water. All the past grief between Stan and Ford can't be resolved here and now, but it's not about fixing everything between them. It's about beginning the healing process and, more importantly, putting things in perspective. Being alone has never done either of them any good, and they've now seen what Dipper and Mabel can face when they work together. Therefore, they also need to understand they can do the same. Once that's done, the final rift will be healed, and they'll have what they need to stop Bill for good and save their family. Despite how uber powerful Bill is in the physical world, he still has limitations. The main one being that even now, he can't enter someone's mind without the party involved agreeing to it with a deal, which is why he hasn't just forced his way into Ford's head to get the information he needs. With Ford's knowledge and Stan's cunning nature, this is the best chance they have to use this restriction of Bill's to their advantage. Bill will be vulnerable when he leaves his new physical form behind to go into the mindscape, but the only thing that can hurt him for good is McGucket's memory gun. But Ford is immune to the gun because of that metal plate he has, as shown when Dipper tried to use it back in the last Mabelcorn. So it sure is lucky that he's got an identical twin who spent the last 30 years impersonating him.
Gotta hand it to you, Ford. You really know how to clear your...
Stan and Ford pull a classic twin switcheroo on the Dapper Demon. This is honestly one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. The way they frame this deception is amazing. The battle damage Ford has been inflicting erases a lot of the more obvious features that differentiate him from Stan, and the scene building up to the deal is so gripping and intense that it's hard to look for the other features. Even with the nagging feeling you might have that you know what they're up to. The reveal is superbly done, and the big gotcha moments just come in rapid fire succession. After building up the dread of losing option after option for ways to defeat Bill's Cipher, the blaze he eventually goes out in feels nearly instantaneous. It's this incredibly odd mix of triumph, catharsis, and dread, because in order to destroy Bill, they need to use the memory gun, which needs memories to target, and to ensure Bill has nowhere to hide, they have to erase Stan's entire mind.
That's awesome! No!
On top of everything else this scene already is, it is also the last resolution to one of the show's major mysteries, perhaps its first ever mystery, the one they show at the beginning of every episode. Not the Zodiac, or even Bill Cipher, but this little one in the corner. Stan is not what he seems. In the beginning, Stan was seen as an old codger who didn't care or believe in what the kids got up to, and would throw anyone or anything under the bus for a quick buck or just for kicks, with a secret objective that he was keeping hidden under a highly convincing facade, deceiving everyone around him. At first, these secrets were believed to be nefarious or motivated by greed or power, but over time, we realize that all of Stan's actions have been motivated by helping his family. Even when he fails them, he'll do anything he can to make it right, only letting what little pride he has left get in the way of that. Stan originally came off as someone greedy, selfish, and only out for himself. That is what many people, including his family, believed him to be. But with everything we've learned about him, every way we've seen him come through for Dipper and Mabel, and with this final act, we now know that Stan's motives and actions have always been for the sake of those he loves, his family. Stan sacrificed himself to take down a being he has no history with and has never interacted with. Even when he was in his mind, they never encountered each other. But this is a monster who has hurt every member of his family, everyone he loves. Stan's family is the most important thing in the universe to him, and he will do whatever it takes to help them if he can. When you think about it, Stan was the last member of the Pines family to make a deal with Bill, and the only one to not fall for any of his tricks. In every way imaginable, Stanley Pines was indeed not what he seemed. In the end, when other characters who swore they'd bring Bill's destruction couldn't do it, Stan got the honor of delivering the final blow. Okay, take back what I said about the Shacktron. Stan punching Bill into oblivion is the coolest thing this show ever did. Becoming the man who took out an entity that has driven brilliant men mad, shaped realities, and destroyed worlds in his underwear.
Stanley!
It's a somewhat bitter victory, though. With Bill gone, the chaos he wrought is banished and reversed. There's a calm rejuvenation across Gravity Falls before Stan wakes up and everyone has to face what they had to lose to win. For a minute, it feels like everything has fallen apart right as the world around them is seemingly repaired. The Pines family return to a shack in shambles, and while Stan is still with them, everything he is gone. It does in fact seem like they lost, even in victory, and there's no way to bring Stan back from this indifferent amnesiac. Unless...
I don't know what this is or who you are or... God, quit it, Waddles! I'm trying to remember my life story!
Before I address this, I want to make it clear, this finale is generally well received. Aside from people who had theories they were die-hard about that didn't end up being the show's endgame, anyone I know who's seen Gravity Falls is pretty content with how it ended. However, if there is a consistent complaint with Take Back the Falls as a finale, it's that many feel that after such a heroic and impactful sacrifice, Stan getting his memories back so easily is a big fat cop-out. In fact, I know some people who think it would have been better if Stan didn't get them back at all. Otherwise, it invalidates the sacrifice he made mere minutes earlier. Personally, I couldn't disagree with this more. From a narrative standpoint, it makes sense that Stan was able to recover. It's been pretty well established that things aren't permanently erased by the memory gun. Memories can be restored with the right stimulus. In this case, it was Mabel's scrapbook that gave the spark of recognition. That alone is already a very nice solution. That scrapbook has been a regular piece of the series, it helped bring Dipper and Mabel back together at the end of the previous episode, and now it's bringing the entire family back together as it recaps the summer that brought them together in the first place. If anything could start this hopeful renewal, it's that. And either because of this critique, or because the crew felt they didn't explain how this all worked well enough on screen, there has been work done to elaborate on what it took to restore Stan's memories in expanded material like Journal 3. This was the first spark to a method that took many forms over the last few days of summer, to slowly bring Stan back fully and completely. But the fact that it works logistically is one thing. The more important thing to me is what it means thematically. And thematically, if they had kept Stan's amnesia permanent or longer lasting, it would have made the entire journey of Gravity Falls feel hollow. No one deserved to have this be how things wound up. No one in the Pines family deserved to lose Stan. Stan didn't deserve to have his memories erased. In the grand scheme of things, this wouldn't have been a meaningful conclusion. Committing to losing Stan would have made for a far less complete story. To anyone who thinks it's unsatisfying for Stan to have regained his memories, tell me if you can say that the boldness of making that sacrifice stick would have been worth also sacrificing the ending we got. Dipper and Mabel's goodbyes at the end of summer would have meant nothing if Stan didn't remember them. How close they've gotten, everything they've been through, how much Dipper and Mabel have grown after the summer he gave them, and how thanks to them, Stan will be far less lonely once they leave. Yeah, keeping Stan in an oblivious shell would have been gutsy, but the man has suffered enough. This sacrifice wasn't a turning point in Stan's character, it's affirming what he always was. Let him be happy already. Besides, the time Amnesiac Stan does last is already pretty freaking devastating. They did an incredible job making you feel the weight of that loss for as long as they could. Having this be the payoff to Mabel suggesting the Stans hug it out is going to be burned into my brain for the rest of my days. As much as I love the angst, I don't know how much longer I needed to dwell on it in the show properly. The evil threatening this family is gone, the end of the world is over, and the little bit of summer that's left is spent celebrating what's been built over this vacation and what the next phase of everyone's lives is going to look like. Dipper and Mabel get to celebrate their 13th birthday with practically the whole town. Ford, now that his mission to stop Bill Cipher is over, is ready to start a new adventure and wants Stan to be a part of it. Stan finally gets his brother back completely as they set out to fulfill their childhood dream of sailing around the world together, which leaves the Mystery Shack vacant, and Seuss is given the title of the new Mr. Mystery. Weirdmageddon may be over, but it seems like the scars of the event left Gravity Falls a little weirder than it already was. Though, as usual, the townsfolk have decided to just ignore it, because some things never change. Like how the Battle of Weirdmageddon attempts to give as many characters as possible a hero moment, even a small one, the Aftermath gives as many characters as possible a chance to say their goodbyes to Dipper and Mabel as the sun sets on the final day of summer and the bus pulls up to take them back home. Offer a nice gesture to show that they're glad they met, they'll never forget them, and hope that maybe they'll cross paths again. Mainly with a lot of passing hats around, which is cute. Full disclosure, I do wish the twins got a more proper goodbye with Seuss or Ford. That felt like a sizable blind spot, but it's almost made up for with their goodbye to Stan, which is absolutely perfect.
You knuckleheads were nothing but a nuisance, and I'm glad to be rid of you.
It does feel bittersweet to see everyone go their separate ways, especially since they became the best of themselves by being around each other. But even though Dipper and Mabel are leaving, it's not sad, because now they're ready to grow up at their own pace thanks to their experiences in Gravity Falls with all their friends and family. Everyone here has grown so much thanks to the summer together. No matter what happens in the future now, they have someone to face that constant uncertainty with. And that makes it far less scary, and maybe even exciting. This may be the end of this story, of our time spending a summer with the Pines family, but it's portrayed as a new chapter for all the characters we've grown to love. And for me, those make for the best kinds of finales. To know the lives of these characters will continue and they will thrive, even if we'll no longer be joining them on their adventures. This is farewell, but not goodbye. Faded pictures bleached by sun, the tale is told, the summer's done. In memories the pines still play, on a sunny summer's day. Season 1 of Gravity Falls, under all its jokes and scares and heart and ciphers, started off with a big promise. If you stick around and pay attention, we're gonna tell a great, shocking story. Season 2 does everything in its power, not just to be bigger and better than the first, like most shows tend to try, but to fulfill that promise and deliver an experience worth all the speculation created by the clues in the show's first half. After realizing just how invested viewers have become in the mystery, there was an active effort to feature hints more and include ominous visual cues foreshadowing future confrontations, as well as dedicate more plot lines to raising the danger and bridging the gap between the unknown and the answers the kids and the viewers seeked. But that didn't mean the show was fully sacrificing fun, absurdity, or giving common childhood experiences a fantastical, weird twist. Keeping up the approach of Gravity Falls of embedding nostalgic memories with real magic. And I wouldn't be shocked if kids who grew up with Gravity Falls would let their own imagination go wild in places like the ones Dipper and Mabel had their adventures in. Especially the action and fight scenes, there are some great, unique environments for action in the season. It's a small but noticeable sign of the show's increased ambition while sticking to their original premise. There was an active effort to not have the same kind of magic or encounter twice. They wanted to keep things fresh and had a lot of ideas they wanted to do with the episodes they had left. But there are still a few episodes that do repeat ideas from season 1, and a true test of the show's quality is how none of them feel derivative. Turning Blendon's return into a thoughtful character piece and traveling into the future, making another anthology episode, but this one more styled after Tales of the Crypt or the Friday the 13th TV show, which is a thing I guess. Having Gideon attempt to take over the town while imprisoned, and doing a living video game again, but taking a much more terrifying turn with it. It also helps that some ideas are sprinkled with or straight up inspired by Alex Hirsch's own weird childhood interests, like secret societies, obscure historical and political trivia, and Japanese culture, because he's a nerd. It is the kind of stuff that helps give the stories of Gravity Falls its eccentric edge, and appealed to me personally as someone who is also a weird nerd, something I clearly outgrew. For the most part, Season 2 has a really good mix of story-heavy, character-exploring, and just plain silly episodes that are spread out really well. No matter what your preferred type of adventure is, you don't have to wait too long for the next one to come around. It makes Season 2 feel more rich. Some ideas you love because they're clever, some ideas you love because they're dumb, and sometimes, somehow, some ideas are both. There's this great anecdote Alex Hirsch mentions about advice Adventure Time creator Pendleton Ward once gave him, which was,
try to make the smartest thing you can, and if it's not good, then try to make the dumbest thing you can. And I think about that advice a lot.
If that doesn't sum up Gravity Falls perfectly, I don't know what does. While we were getting closer to unlocking the mysteries of Gravity Falls as we progressed through the season, that didn't mean they weren't gonna tease us relentlessly, or find ways to feel like we were getting answers while finding excuses to not really say anything. Bill gloating about keeping the mysteries of the universe from Dipper, Stan still being secretive, McGucket not recovering all of his memories at once, the list goes on. They did a pretty remarkable job pacing the show in a way where even if we were getting answers slowly, it didn't feel infuriating. Like, there's no episode of Gravity Falls that feels like a waste of time. Except for one, maybe. We were slowly unlocking secrets and unknown corners in this world to explore new areas of it. Which is not only impressive in a mystery-fueled show that also tried to have episodic antics, it's something that a lot of them struggle with, but also catering that to a community who either figured out or signed onto a major theory that turned out to be 100% correct. A mystery hinges on the reveal, if it lines up with what was built up, and how it will shake things up afterwards. In my eyes, a mystery fails when the buildup either doesn't match the answer or is more interesting than the reveal. That's why people feel so disappointed when a reveal feels lackluster or convoluted. But as much as I try to be ambiguous to newcomers, honestly, you can go into Gravity Falls knowing the twist. Because not only is the reveal superbly done, but the inclusion of Ford makes the show all the more compelling. Gravity Falls becomes a whole different experience when you watch it for a second time, knowing the whole history. The intrigue isn't gone, just recontextualized, which is again hard to do. The show also becomes vastly interesting with Ford's introduction, but in an entirely different way. I cannot stress enough how tremendously this could have fallen flat. If you just read out this tangled path of deceit to the reveal of a secret twin hidden in the shadows, it sounds like something you'd see on a soap opera. But it's a twist that miraculously dodges everything that could have made it contrived. It flips the script of the show completely on its head, while simultaneously revealing what the show was about the entire time. It passed the test of a good, satisfying mystery with flying colors in nearly every respect. Which is very impressive because the show's main mystery was kind of being made up as they went along. Well, the details of it anyway. Gravity Falls' approach to mystery writing is what I think really paid off in the end. To explain what I mean, here is Alex Hirsch explaining what was set in stone about Gravity Falls in terms of the mystery once they got the ball rolling.
At this point in the series, what we knew continuity-wise was a little bit. We knew that Grunkle Stan had a twin brother. We knew that his twin brother wrote this journal and several more. And we knew that this twin brother was the original creator of the Mystery Shack, which was originally a lab before it was turned into a tourist trap. That him and Stan had some kind of rivalry. He had kind of a charmed life, Stan didn't. And that his dealings with the supernatural got him caught up in some business, resulting in him being taken away by some evil, mysterious force. And now Stan has been sort of taking over his life and searching for him at night. But the fact that the big bad was Bill, the fact that there was a portal, the idea that Old Man McGucket was involved, those were things that we discovered over the course of the process.
The core of Gravity Falls' mystery was how the opposition between Stan and Ford divided them until unimaginable forces got involved and tested their division to its absolute physical limit, with Dipper and Mabel eventually shaking things up, playing a part in these events moving forward after decades of stagnation, and reflecting on their uncle's life story and doing better. Everything surrounding that was figured out later. While this does lead to some inconsistencies or things that can be seen as having an underwhelming payoff because it wasn't part of the grand plan from day one, I think the flexibility in the approach to the show's overarching story was a benefit in the long run. I'd say the main problem shows with a mystery or predetermined ending have, especially when the engagement in the narrative relies heavily on the search for a big answer, is that it restricts the chance to have things act organically. Television is a swiftly evolving form of storytelling. The more creative people get to work with the same world and characters, the more they get molded by different hands to take new risks and change. If you have a set in stone ending, where the story winds up might not fit anymore with how everything changed over several individual stories. Gravity Falls had a flexibility that most mystery-driven shows don't. While it had an unchangeable set of circumstances that were foreshadowed constantly, the larger the show's world got and the more certain characters became more interesting and fun to use, they had the freedom to chase the story potential without being confined to a plan they had to follow no matter what. McGucket and Bill are probably the best examples of this. With McGucket, they took a character that was fun to write and had a quirk that could slot him into the story of this long-lost researcher, and used him to add speculation to their search for the author, and enrich the tragedy behind Ford's own search for answers, a sign of a downfall that is a warning to not be repeated by the next generation. With Bill, because they hadn't thought of a thing responsible for Ford's disappearance at first, once they created a being that fit that role perfectly, they were able to roll with it. As hard as this might be to believe, Bill was not conceived to be the main villain, just an omniscient being that they love sticking in the background. But that resulted in Bill having a presence and a fan base before he even appeared, and once he did, and showed off his power, it became an obvious choice. Since the slot of Big Bad was open, Bill fit right in, and would go on to become one of Disney Television's most iconic villains. They were able to facilitate both the needs of the show's overarching story and how their characters and the reception towards them evolved over time, having a great instinct to make it all feel intentional right from the start, simply because it felt right from what the show became, rather than tethering the show to a predetermined, unmoving path. Kinda like how you know your destination on a drive, but then there are several different ways to get there. It's all a matter of what feels right. I think the only downside of this approach is that it left some things that felt like foreshadowing unexplored or led to some inconsistencies. Nothing major in the grand scheme of things, the concept of the mystery was followed through until the end, but because the viewers are led to believe that every hint is important, when the approach of, maybe we'll figure out something cool later, withers away, it's felt much more. There are a few of these, like Stan's tattoo, which turns out to be a burn mark he got in the fight with Ford. A shocking and pretty brutal reveal to watch Stan be pretty much branded by his brother, but the symbol itself doesn't seem to have any significance. So why did he hide it? And why does Bill get startled recalling it? And why was it there in the first place? There were a lot of references in various Gravity Falls material to a secret society called the Royal Order of the Holy Mackerel that people speculated a lot about, to the point that one of the most popular Gravity Falls content creators at the time used it as their handle, but that didn't really go anywhere and was relegated to further brief mentions. The use of Blendon not just as Bill's pawn, but as the only time traveler who survived Weirdmageddon, and he just bails, never to be seen again, which is very odd. But I don't think there's a better example of this fault than Shermie. See, when you reveal a secret sibling to Dipper and Mabel's great uncle, audiences will want to know if that was their grandfather, and the crew knew that. So right after the reveal, they confirm the existence of another brother Stan has that he's never mentioned before. The kid's grandfather, Shermie. Now, Shermie isn't really important to Gravity Falls, nor should he be. He was just a way to explain away a natural question. So when we see this baby during our look into Stan and Ford's past, the logical conclusion is that this is Shermie. Simple enough, questions over, until people did the math and realized that that doesn't make a lot of sense. Shermie's place in the family since then has been wildly theorized and contested. To this day, there is no concrete answer on if this is Shermie, another child, or maybe even Shermie's child in official material. Now, Alex Hirsch did go into detail about this complication in an interview conducted by That GF Fan, check it out, but my point still stands. An important thing to note is that Gravity Falls' timeline is a bit vague by design. Hirsch has admitted multiple times that he wants the time the show takes place in to be more nebulous, so anyone can connect it with their own childhoods. But in a mystery with hints and clues and long-spanning conspiracy, dates and times are helpful. Rob Renzetti played a big part in making sure the events lined up with each new clue they added, because Alex Hirsch, the man who wanted a complicated mystery, is apparently bad at numbers and dates. Renzetti did a great job considering the approach they took, but it meant they only used dates as much as they needed to, which explains some of the discrepancies. Many far more thorough than me have tried to crack this timeline, and it leads down a pretty maddening path the deeper you get. Again, Shermie does not matter in the grand scheme of the story, but in such a well-crafted show, when you're one of the few puzzle pieces that doesn't quite fit and hasn't been properly addressed since, it can stand out a lot more. I am guilty of this myself. Even if I don't care if we ever see or hear from Shermie in any form, I want to know what the deal is with this kid just as much as some of you do. Although my friend Orange Octopi posted a theory that Shermie is a time traveler and that's why his place in the timeline is all out of whack. Now that is a headcanon I can get behind. Engaging with Gravity Falls is weird in that way. It's such a well-constructed show that when the cracks are seen, they become more prevalent. Or at least some of the more hardcore fans fixate on them more. I actually know people who genuinely thought the show was retconning itself because the direction the mystery went in didn't go exactly how they theorized. Mind you, this was a minority, but man, that's kind of ridiculous, guys. You can't retcon what you haven't thought of yet. As a whole, Gravity Falls attempted to tell the most compelling and satisfying story it could, with the heart of what crafted the mystery in the first place guiding everything else. And that dedication is what makes the end product memorable and wholly engaging to audiences everywhere. Even the few times it faltered with its hints, it always rewarded investment by giving us something to look for no matter the episode or circumstances. Let's talk a bit about the ciphers. Back in season 1, ciphers sometimes took effort to find, but weren't particularly hard to decode. They used pretty standard methods, mainly Caesar, @bash, and A1Z26. A fun way to get kids into code breaking and make them feel like they were solving a mystery alongside the protagonists. But with season 2, they knew they had intelligent viewers ready to decipher whatever code they put into it mere minutes after the episode aired. So they decided to make it a little more challenging. Not just with more codes, but more complicated codes. For the ciphers on those pages at the end of each episode, you need to use a combination of all of the ciphers from season 1 combined to decode it. And for the code at the end of the credits, they follow the Vigenère cipher system. For those who don't know, Vigenère is a far more complex cipher. It's not a matter of simply replacing letters succinctly. It's more like a grid to encode and decode it, in that you need a keyword to find the correct sequence. Okay, so what was the keyword? Well, it was different each time, hidden in creative and elaborate ways in every episode. When I say they wanted to challenge their audience, I meant it. They were trying to be as sneaky as they could while still making codes plausible to solve. The lengths they went to incorporate these keywords is a whole new level of impressive to me. The infamous flyby keyword in the Love God is really just the tip of the iceberg. If you've ever wondered why sometimes the title of the first part of Weirdmageddon looks like this, it's because they encoded the title out of fear of it being leaked. That's how on top of things they were. Some of the humor also got pretty meta this season, as they now had a fan base to center jokes around, and it's pretty amusing, not gonna lie.
I'll have you know that Ducktective has a big mystery element and a lot of humor that goes over kids' heads.
Even though they're incredibly interesting and sophisticated, and Gravity Falls has these incredible plot lines.
All right.
The most important thing about Gravity Falls, though, is that it had a story to tell beyond the mystery, beyond the codes, beyond the secrets being kept on all sides. Because as fun and engaging as all that was, it wasn't the heart of Gravity Falls. It's what made it exciting, made it stand out, and made a lot of its successors want to be like it in their own way. But unlocking Gravity Falls' greatest mysteries isn't just the solution to a long-worked puzzle, but reveals what the show was always about: family and growing together. Remember, the only thing that was set in stone about the show's overarching story, from day one, was that Stan was searching for his long-lost twin, and Ford and his downfall were the catalyst for everything else, with Dipper and Mabel coming in to offer progression and insight. What changed, or rather what was worked out later, were the details, the bits of story and character that evolved as the show came into itself. It feels very reminiscent of uncovering stories about your own family's past, the good, the bad, the complicated, and the rarely talked about. Stuff like that can feel distant, almost cryptic. Dipper and Mabel spend this whole summer uncovering their own family history, and the whole Pines family goes from a bunch of scattered, lonely outcasts to a loving, maturing family. The famous "trust no one" quote is meant to act as a foreboding warning for whatever lies ahead in this far-off Oregon town. That mentality, though, winds up creating a lot of the dangers the Pines family wind up in. The only way to fight off the evil, mysterious, spooky things that lurk in the woods and the world around is to have a supportive system of trust and camaraderie. Gravity Falls is a very character-driven series, with the narrative in place to challenge established or freshly forming relationships. Usually it's individual actions that make the greatest impact on the story, rather than solving a complex riddle and letting the answer zap a problem away. I think the Cipher wheel represents this best. It turned out to work as a symbol for the series and the newly formed alliances among the cast, but would have been underwhelming for resolving the issue of Bill Cipher, if we're all being honest. It feels almost deceptive to realize that that's what the show was about this whole time, but it's an intimacy and sentimentality that ultimately gives Gravity Falls its heart. Why viewers cared a lot about the show before and after the major questions were answered, and why nearly every episode is important, even if it's not a big game changer. Because they all build on the show's central theme that the mystery guides the viewer towards: to grow and mature by learning and keeping those you love and who love you close. Because when you don't, it can feel like the whole world is falling apart around you. In fact, there are times where it feels like there weren't enough episodes. The main storyline is paced really well, but on an episodic level, Gravity Falls is full of so much potential for such an enclosed location. There is abundant creativity in every episode, yet it feels like they're just scratching the surface. Not to mention, there was so much untapped potential with the characters. So then that becomes increasingly obvious once Ford entered the picture, and then was absent for half of the episodes after his return. It can feel like we lost something with the show only being 2 seasons. For every episode produced, there's a dozen scrapped ideas it's standing on top of. I personally think it could have been cool to have Not What He Seems at the end of a season, and then spend a whole season 3 with Ford and the family. But I think a lot of people can agree that it's better to feel like you want more adventures with the show, rather than have it overstay its welcome. Do I think Gravity Falls would have overstayed its welcome? Not necessarily, but after hearing from Alex Hirsch and the crew members how much work and dedication they put into this show, and that they only had one more season in them to give it all they had, I respect the direction they took and appreciate that they came back at all to finish what they started and make it as great as it was. There's a not zero amount of people who have been crying out for a 3rd season of Gravity Falls ever since it concluded, which only got louder in recent years as more people have discovered the show. But that's not gonna happen. Nor should it. While there were some things left up in the air,
A-S-O-L-O-T-L! My time has come to burn! I invoke the ancient power that I may return!
Gravity Falls is so complete as it is that I wouldn't want that to be ruined. This quote from Alex Hirsch really put it in perspective for me.
I knew once we know who wrote the journals, there's not a lot of show left. Because without that tension, it's something interesting, but it's not Gravity Falls anymore.
Before pen was put to paper on anything involving season 2, the team behind Gravity Falls knew it would be their last season. So they decided to take the plunge and give this season everything they had. Live up to the expectations set up in season 1, where they welcomed us to Gravity Falls by making the journey up to when we had to say goodbye feel worth the time and commitment put into it. From the hardworking team behind it to the dedicated viewers. And I think that dedication really shows. The fact that it feels like there could be more to do with this family is part of that completeness. Gravity Falls is meant to have a bittersweet feeling, when a chapter of your life ends, but you're ready to start a new one. The story of Gravity Falls does have ways to continue, as it has in books or graphic novels, or could in a Stan of War spinoff. Huh? 10 or 20 episodes on Disney+? Disney? Think about it, please? But in terms of Dipper and Mabel spending a magical summer in this strange little lumber town in Rogue Hill County, Oregon, that's never going to be captured the same way again. I don't think it could be. But I am very grateful that we got the chance to follow along with them during this life-changing adventure somewhere out there in the woods. Fear not, though. The story of Gravity Falls may be over, but this is just the beginning for this retrospective, as we'll be taking an equally in-depth look into the many beloved characters that inhabit Gravity Falls, starting with the Mystery Twins themselves, next time on Going Back to Gravity Falls. Thanks so much for watching Going Back to Gravity Falls, everyone, and thank you for your patience as I got part 2 out. As you could see, it's much longer and more involved than the first, so I needed the time to put it together. And of course, a very special thanks to my patrons who help support my content, including Jinx Productions, Wait in the Wings, and Jim. And if you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to check any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.
The event 1 billion years prophesied has come to pass!